Thank you for taking the time to watch this program. It addresses a serious and ever-growing problem in Indian country, elder abuse. I hope you will take the messages presented here to heart and pay particularly close attention to the recommendations for responding to the problem. Elder abuse is contrary to the traditional teachings. Let's work together to end the abuse. Thank you.
Come, let's honor the elders, men and women who have made it through the night, through the darkness that came upon this land, with the winds of change, with the winds of change. With courage carried on to keep alive the song that we still sing.
Malnourished, physically abused, financially exploited, and abandoned for days at a time. This is how too many Native American elders are spending their so-called golden years. Something must be done to end this tragedy. Something can be done. Together as a community of concerned Indian people, tribal leaders, and dedicated professionals, we can end elder abuse in Native communities. We can restore the sacred circle. Well, I was just through here a couple weeks ago. Elder abuse. It's not a pleasant topic. But incidents of abuse, abandonment, and neglect have become all too frequent in Indian country. And ignoring the issue or pretending that it doesn't exist only allows it to become worse. So we must be like our brother the buffalo and face into the winds of the storm and not turn our back to it. In this program, we will tackle the issue of elder abuse head on.
What are you doing here?
We're dropping the kids off with you for the weekend while we'll go to the powwow. Did your per capita check come in? We need some cash for the trip.
I need to pay my propane bill.
We need your car. Ours is out of gas.
But
Mom,
son.
Don't be that way. Your grandkids' needs come first.
You're hurting my arm.
I'll be back in a couple of days. Bye, kids.
The preceding scene demonstrated several examples of different kinds of elder abuse as defined by the National Indian Council on Aging and other agencies. Sadly, scenes like this happen every day in Indian country. So what constitutes elder abuse, and how is it manifesting in Indian country? We've asked Monty Jones, an Adult Protective Services investigator, to explain.
We investigate several things, and one thing that we see a lot of is physical abuse. There could be unexplained arm marks with someone grabbing their elder. People being locked or restrained in bedrooms to beds. Another thing that we investigate is exploitation. Automobiles missing, trailers missing, motorcycles missing. We see a lot of financial exploitation. Their children are stealing the money from them. Bills aren't getting paid. Abandonment. Sometimes elders are left in their home for days, sometimes weeks. Sexual abuse. Sexual abuse is one that's not uncommon. If you're over the age of 60 and a caretaker is inappropriately touching you or you're not agreeing with things that are going on, that is sexual abuse. Then we also look at mental abuse. Mental abuse is what I see a lot of with the Native Americans. The younger generations are not letting their elders do what they do. I mean, their beliefs.
The Indian artifacts that we've inherited from grandparents and great-grandparents, and that adult children will come in and take those and take them and pawn them, or just steal them outright and sell them to artifact dealers. Very, very sad, because there's so much emotion and history and culture and tradition attached to a lot of the artifacts.
It's hard to work with elder abuse. Our families are very extended. Our families are very important. If our child or our grandchild is abusing us, we don't want anybody to know. We're ashamed. Of course, the fear factor comes in on what happens if we tell about it. And I think as tribes, we're still a little bit in denial that elder abuse is even occurring in Indian country.
In order to end the abuse of our elders and begin the process of healing for both the abused and the abuser, we must first understand some of the root causes for the destructive behavior. Where does this tendency for abuse come from, and why is it plaguing Native communities?
In Indian country, the factors that contribute to elder abuse are many, and they're very complex. Certainly, a central feature of elder abuse is the extremely difficult economic conditions. There are just not enough dollars in Indian communities for families to live on. Of all the problems elders have in Indian country, I think money certainly is central to those. Unemployment rates are extraordinarily high. So the elders lack access to transportation, they lack access to health care, they lack adequate nutrition, they lack adequate education. All of these are tied directly or indirectly to funding levels. Another factor could be that there's really a breakdown in Indian family interaction. Indian children are finding much less quality time with their grandparents, and those great strengths that we have in our Indian communities, the wisdom of those elders and their strength and their ability to advise our youth, we're losing those opportunities because parents are working off reservation, kids are gone to school. Indian country is being overwhelmed with a wave of violent crime. Homicide rates are 3 to 4 times the national average. And where homicides are shrinking in much of America, in Indian country, they've been rising. The Department of Justice in 1997 issued a report about crime in Indian country that said if Navajo Reservation were a city, it would be one of the top 10 most violent cities in the country. Another reservation in Montana had a murder rate higher than New Orleans, one of the nation's most violent cities.
Another layer of reality underlies this list of depressing conditions in Indian country. These factors are negative social trends that have been observed over the past 2 generations. These include erosion of cultural values, loss of some of the status and roles once held by older adults within the community, gradual loosening of extended family ties, intergenerational conflict, violent family patterns, socio and geographic isolation, loss of family relationship skills due to negative outside influences, including boarding schools and other church and government programs, low self-esteem and a sense of powerlessness in the abuser, which can lead to various forms of abuse. These problems and challenges faced by Indian people, in reality, are merely symptoms of a deeper disease.
My great-grandfather would talk about the trauma of the ships coming up the straits and how whole villages were decimated from smallpox and how they were introduced to alcohol. And our peoples used to be a peaceful peoples, and how discipline was, when things went wrong, it was taken care of in a manner that was respectful.
Settlers increasingly influenced government policy making towards Indians. And other groups also arrive, like missionaries who want to make major changes to the Indian cultures. And so in the middle of the 19th century, there's a whole series of changes that really begin to influence Indian cultures in a major way. And in contrast to the fur traders, who basically had a cooperative relationship with the Indians, a cooperative economic relationship, and had to cooperate with the Indians to a certain extent in order to make a livelihood. The settlers and gold miners and missionaries, well, settlers and gold miners anyway, came with objectives that didn't necessarily involve the Indians. They didn't have to take any notice of Indian demands and interests, and increasingly did not. So you move into a period where the Indian is increasingly pushed aside, where attitudes towards the Indians become more and more negative, where stereotypes based on ignorance become more and more prominent, and have an increasing effect on the nature of race relations. Government policy is increasingly affected by settlers, and increasingly Indians are moved off the land in order to make it available for settlers to farm.
The seniors talked to me about the loss of our culture and the loss of our language as a good indicator of our culture. And being in the boarding schools or the mission schools, whichever it was, when the seniors, or as youth, were sent away and made to be ashamed of who we were and what our culture was and our language and everything about it, and came back, and during that time we really lost parts of our identity, and the pattern, the generational pattern of parenting and taking care of our families was broken. All those patterns of loss and all those things that were happening to us led to the problems in our societies today. The unemployment, the low income, the alcoholism, the abuse, and it's all been a chain, I think, of what's happened over the years. When you're working with elder abuse in Indian country, the most promising approach seems to be interdisciplinary. Because we have so many different programs and between the Indian Health Service and the BIA and tribal and county and state or wherever, we all need to really work together, and the interdisciplinary approach seems to have worked best, where we may form, I know some tribes have formed Adult Protective Services teams and have teams that meet on a regular basis to discuss individual seniors who may have been abused, and looking kind of like, imagine a pie, and each program can provide a piece of that pie in assisting the senior. I think that's probably the best approach and seems to be one of the best practice approaches that's going on right now. It truly does take everyone involved. It takes the Title VI programs or the Older Americans Act programs in providing the services they do with meals and transportation, social services. It takes the CHRs, the Indian Health Service, and the CHRs making their home visits. Social workers, families need to be more involved. And as communities, we need to talk more about the position of our seniors and what's going on. I think we might know it's happening and not want to say anything, not want to offend people or not want to offend families or get ourselves in trouble, whether it's politically or in the community. And we need to do that. We need to really put our seniors back in that place where they truly are revered people in our communities.
The approach that we use is that if there's an elder abuse case that comes into our office, we are required to make an adult protective report. After we make the report, then I send out an outreach worker immediately to check on the family. After the report comes back in from my outreach worker, then I make the necessary calls. I may call the tribal police. I may call Indian Health Service. I may call in-home health to send a nurse out immediately to check on the elder.
Oh, thank you for getting here so quickly. I've been so worried about Mrs. Wyamsha.
Yes, I'm Officer Curtis with the Yakima Nation Police Department.
I'm Della.
I'm Officer Robbins.
What makes you think it's elder abuse?
Well, she missed the culture class on Saturday.
You think she might just be sick?
I thought so, but when I got here, I knocked on the door and nobody answered. And when I peeked in the window, and her house is a mess, and she hardly ever leaves it that way.
You think she might be on vacation? Does she own a car?
Yes, she owns a car. Her good-for-nothing son come up, took it and left the kids with her. And all I've been hearing is just yelling and them running around, and they really trashed up the yard.
Where are the kids now?
The father come in Sunday and picked them up, and he took the car too. I was going to turn it in, but I didn't think it was none of my business.
Well, ma'am, it's your business as well as your responsibility. But just have you ladies wait here. I'll go and check it out.
Okay.
Proper response to elder abuse requires a coordinated team effort that should involve multiple key agencies and professionals. Ideally, members of this multidisciplinary team should include the Tribal Police, the Reservation Elderly Services Department, Indian Health Service, Reservation Fire or Safety Department, the local Community Health Agency, the Tribal Justice Department, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs. The Multidisciplinary Team Approach, or MDT, is a proven method for successfully responding to elder abuse. Here's what this approach is all about.
The multidisciplinary team for the Yakima Nation Area Agency on Aging can consist of many agencies. Sometimes we make referrals to immediately, maybe if it's physical abuse, to the doctors, telling them that we have a client that we're bringing in. Sometimes it's to the Yakima County APS, Adult Protective Service, having them go out and investigate. And it can involve the Tribal Council, our HEW committee, our advisory board, our in-home health, our ambulance services. Sometimes it is to the Tribal Police, telling them that we have an incident at this family's home.
Hello, you have anything for me?
There's nothing going on right now.
Okay, thank you.
If it's tribal law enforcement, we may get a call from friends, family, or medical profession. Our first job is evidence gathering to document potential abuse in the event that criminal charges are filed later on. Photos should be taken of any signs of physical abuse or neglect, and the victim should be interviewed without interference from relatives or caregivers. This is to reduce the possibility of intimidation by the caregiver who may be the abuser. If there is evidence of elder abuse, then the next step is to write a report and notify the appropriate tribal agency and the MDT.
No matter what your role in responding to elder abuse, it's important to remember 3 principles of elder abuse intervention. 1. Use the least restrictive alternative. 2. Do no further harm. And 3. Respect the elder's right to self-determination.
After the abuse has been identified, the approach goes into a preventive mode and has several steps entailed in that, from intake and assessment, determining what the needs are, a care plan, the opportunity to develop and plan for the needs of the elder, and also counseling to offer this to the elder who's been abused to be able to cope with what has happened. The final process of bringing the perpetrator to justice through the criminal, civil, and administrative process. As the multidisciplinary team continue to work together for the benefit of the elders, we have to take a look at the living conditions, environmental conditions, the economic resources available, and the social services for the completion of the process.
The total interdisciplinary services which may be called on to protect abused elders could include emergency services, such as emergency shelter, an emergency caretaker, or temporary financial help. Medical and professional care in the form of health care screening, homemaker and chore care, home health care, drug information, mental health care, and dental care. Social support, such as outreach information and referral, crime prevention, telephone reassurance, friendly visitors, daycare, support groups, transportation, and nutrition. Legal and financial services, including information on banking options, guardianship, conservatorship, civil commitment, legal services, and legal representation.
You put them in your register, and then it's really important that you balance it every month.
Finally, home support and housing, foster care, alternative housing, and home repair come under this category. If your tribal community does not already have a way of handling elder abuse cases, remember that an effective protective service system should be authorized by tribal law. Typically, this law names an agency that will receive elder abuse reports and investigates them. The law should also set standards for deciding if abuse has taken place and creates ways to develop plans to help abused elders. All these steps should be included to protect our elders.
When we're looking at elder abuse in Indian country and we're looking at the perpetrator or the offender, we need to offer services. We need to offer some assistance to them. We have to remember that the perpetrator is someone that usually is important to that senior. And I've talked to seniors and I've talked to other program people in reservations who say that the elder being abused will not admit to that abuse unless they can be assured that there will be assistance for that person. So if we're looking at anger management, if we're looking at some sort of counseling, if we're looking at trying to get them into employment programs or education or alcohol, drug abuse, whatever the situation is, we really need to also open up our minds and kind of look at the whole situation from the eyes of the senior and look at what we can do to strengthen that family unit.
Something that doesn't belong to you, okay?
Another important aspect of a healthy response to elder abuse is community education, both on the topic of elder abuse itself and on appropriate traditional values and traditions which community members may not have learned. Healthy attitudes and behaviors are usually learned in childhood by observing appropriate behaviors of adults in the community. But when these behaviors are not learned, or they are replaced by destructive ones, then more appropriate values must be taught by example and by instruction. For Native Americans, an important part of that instruction includes the life ways of traditional tribal culture and values. Most of us already know that elder abuse was not a traditional part of Native American society, but just what were the values that kept tribal communities strong and ensured that these values were passed on from generation to generation.
We have the different tribes that come like from the river and the plateau, and they gathered years ago in a home or a longhouse and discuss anything that was important to the tribal members, which dealt with taking care of our elders. They were never within a nursing home. A family member cared for them. If a father was lost, an uncle took the son and taught them all about the culture of a male. The women, it was either the aunts or the grandparents, mainly the grandparents, who took the children, and they taught them the gathering of the different foods, especially the girls, how to serve. I gave my grandparents respect because they were elders and they were storytellers, and we learned from these stories that discipline, the way of life, these were great at night. Grandmother used to lay on a mattress on the floor and we'd be all around her just listening to these stories. There's stories about the salmon, spiliai, the coyote, huckleberries, the eagle, the rivers,
the trees. The reason why I'm in the senior citizens program is because I have a role model. My grandfather died when he was about 95 years old, and he raised us he was my only father. He was a hardworking, honest man, and the elder taught us how to respect our lives, our body, our home. We practiced our religion in our home, and we went out and got our education and came back and taught our children. And that's, I believe, all families should be helping families. And that is our sincere belief that if we had families helping families, we wouldn't need adult protective services. We wouldn't need in-home health, going out and looking at elder abuse, physical elder abuse. We wouldn't need legal for exploitation. We wouldn't need the nursing homes, because our culture and our tradition states that we need to take care of our own families.
If we apply all the components of appropriate response to elder abuse in our communities, maybe we'll be able to help create a better quality of life for our elders.
Come in and have something to eat.
Thanks, Mom, but we're running late and we got a long drive ahead of us. We really appreciate you watching the kids while we make this trip.
I'm glad that you called.
I'll put these groceries in the kitchen.
Here's some money just in case the kids need something or need gas for the car.
Thank you.
And remember, kids, Grandma's in charge while we're gone. She's the boss. I bet if you're good, Grandma would tell you the story on how Coyote fell from the sky.
The scenes you've just witnessed and the solutions we've presented are relevant to your community, whether you live in the city or in the reservation. Whether you're in the Pacific Northwest, the desert Southwest, the plains, or the eastern woodlands, the local scenery may look different, but the problem is the same. When our elders are abused, we all lose. Elder abuse in Native communities threatens the links between generations, upsets the balance with self, spirit, family, and community, and above all, threatens the circle of life. When we all work together, we can respond to and decrease elder abuse in our tribal communities. We thank you for your attention, and we hope these ideas will help you in your efforts to end elder abuse in your community and restore the sacred circle.
Now it's time for us to listen to what they have to say. Out there is so much wisdom, and I know they know the way. And if we hear just what they say, we will not fade away.